start. Thanks for joining us this morning. I run these webinars monthly. I've got another one at 10:30 Perth time, and I do other webinars which I'll go through later as we go. My name's David Ashton. I'm have been an advisor with Business Station since 2014, plus all my other business consultancy work. That's the areas of expertise. For the purpose of this webinar, I've sat on both sides of the fence. I've been a procurement manager, where in government and private industry, where I have put together tender packages to go to market, sat on selection panels to award tenders and manage that whole process. So I've seen plenty of good tenders and tender submissions and plenty of bad ones. I've also submitted tenders for myself. I won a big tender with the Department of Local Government over here last year, which that project is still being finalised. And I've also won tenders for my clients as well. I've also haven't won tenders that I've submitted. So there's always a range of reasons why you win and why you don't. But we'll go through that today. So I'm bringing that practical experience of sitting on both sides of the fence to this discussion as well. So I'll be talking to you from the perspective of a person sitting on a selection panel and looking at what I would want to see in a submission from yourselves. So that's the basis of my experience. Business Station, I'll leave that with you, and also the digital solutions program, which you can take advantage of. That is going out tender shortly as well, but it's still available for a few more months. So today, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about what is tendering. I use that term as a catch-all for, I guess, bidding is another term that you use, but there's some particular terminology that is available or that is used in the tendering process. We're going to look at where you can find tender opportunities through digital and other platforms. We're going to look at once you've found a tender that you're interested in, the process of deciding whether you should submit the tender or not. We'll look at preparing and finalising your submission, so the whole process of sitting down and writing your tender response. Then we'll look at how tenders are generally assessed and the sort of things that a selection panel looks for. Then I'm going to touch on management systems. So what I mean by that is policies, procedures, and the like that you're more often than not going to get asked about in your tender. Do you have a quality management system? Do you have a safety management policy or procedure? Those types of management systems. So I'm just going to touch on that, and then we'll finish up. If you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll answer them verbally as we go, although I may be getting to your answer. And then at the end of the session, I'll just leave the mic open and turn on your mic. So if you wanted to have a brief chat about something, I'm happy to do that. So I'm assuming you can all hear me. Otherwise, I've been talking to myself for a while. As I mentioned in the chat box, I will send through a copy of these slides later to you today, and the recording will be available from Business Station next week. So let's make a start. Let's look at tendering. So what is tendering? It's a formal process. It requires a bit of work from both parties. It's essentially an offer and acceptance process. The buyer will prepare a document outlining what it is they want to buy and the type of company they want to engage to buy that, to purchase it from, whether it be goods or services. And from your point of view, you need to respond to that offer, or that invitation, I should say, by a closing date and time, and provide them with all the information they have requested to assist them to make a decision on who they should award the contract to. Some terminology that you're going to come across: expression of interest. That's essentially a two-stage process. First stage, it's sort of like a pre-qualification process. They'll go to market and say, well, this is the sort of stuff we want to purchase, and they're looking for companies that can potentially do that with a view to pre-qualifying them for a second stage tender process. So they might get, say, 20 responses to the EOI. They might go through them and assess them and say, right, well, we think these 12 are best suited to our needs, so they'll be pre-qualified, and then any subsequent tenders will just go to those pre-qualified suppliers. A request for quote, small dollar value, low dollar limit, could just be, ring up and get 3 quotes for something that's worth $1,000. It could be worth something, say $100,000. It'll be require a bit more rigor. So both can be, depending on the purchasing policies of the organisation, can be verbal or in writing. You may receive a document from them that requires a similar approach to a full-blown tender. Request for tender, large-scale procurement with high dollar value. So anything in state government over $250,000 generally has to be advertised publicly. And similar approach in Queensland and Northern Territory. They have dollar limits that specify the extent of public engagement with tenders and procurement generally. The scope or specification is clearly defined, so they know exactly what they want to purchase, and you need to develop your bid around that. Request for proposal, similar approach, but in this occasion, the scope or specification is not clearly defined. So they're wanting you to identify a solution. They know what they want to achieve. They're asking for you to put forward the solution to that, and then you prepare your bid and your pricing around that. So they'll assess you on, and whether it be a tender, a quote, EOI, or whatever, they're going to assess your capacity to deliver what they want, when they want it, at a price that they're prepared to pay. That's essentially what you've got to demonstrate to them. So if we look here, where can we find tenders? Well, generally, mostly through digital platforms these days. You can, and the platforms that I'm going to give you, you can register free of charge. Some are run by the government, others are run by private organisations. I have no associations with those private organisations, but some of the government and other agencies, organisations use those. So you need to go to the respective websites that I'm going to show you, register your details, and subscribe to tender email alerts. So it'll ask you to go through and check box the types of tenders that you're interested in, and then when those are released to the market, you'll receive advice of that, and then you go through the process of downloading them, that which we'll get to. So local governments, register with individual local governments. Again, you can receive a similar email alert. The local government associations in each state provide information as well. But generally you register with each individual local government or go to their website and do that. I think it's important to build a relationship with the buyer. So, for example, if local government's a particular market with yourself for your business, then contact the councils that that you're seeking to target, and just ask to be put on a supplier list or a supplier register so that you can receive invitations to quote. Connect via their social media platforms, because not every procurement is publicly advertised. So there'll be someone that sit there and they'll do a Google search, or they'll have a list of suppliers that they've dealt with in the past, or they've encouraged you to register individually with the council. So so don't expect everything to be publicly advertised. So you need to, let them know that you're available to do work for them, basically. So if we look at some of the websites, so I'll just go through WA first, and I've got the other states as well. So WA government, they use a platform called Tenders WA. So again, go through there and register. And as I said, I'll send these documents to you so you can go and have a look at the links. Department of Finance, in WA, and it's the same in other states, they provide, or they manage a lot of the procurement for the state government agencies. So even though it's the actual agency that'll make the final decision, it's the Department of Finance that'll manage the process. That link there takes you to the whole, it gives you all the details of how government procures goods and services in WA. So other platforms, so federal government or the Commonwealth government, AusTenders, and they've got a separate platform for IT procurement. National projects, so your big mining and construction projects, Gateway website there. One of the private sector portals, so 360 providers portal, you register with them free of charge. Vendor portal, Tenderlink, and WA Local Government Association, you can register as a preferred supplier to local government. They put out panel contracts for local government and manage some council procurement. And then the second website is a directory of all local governments in WA. You can register for other states as well. So, if you are based in WA and you want to do work in Queensland, then you can register for the various local and state government and private organisations in other states. So that's why I've given you that. Traditional media in WA, the West Australian newspaper on Wednesdays and Saturdays advertises local government tenders, generally those over $150,000. And also have a look at your national and regional newspapers as well. And in other states, they have similar advertising provisions as well. So check your local papers. So digital platforms in Queensland. So you can see there the two the state government tender portals there. Again, build relationships. And likewise, Northern Territory, that's your platform there. So yeah, go and have a look at those websites later on, and register your details with those free of charge, so you can start and receive tender advice. So we're going to go through. There's a logical process I'm going through here. So you've got an understanding of what tendering is and the procurement process. I've now shown you some websites that you can go to free of charge and register your details. You'll receive an alert for a tender. Go through and you'll need to download that documentation for the tender, and then go through the next stage of the process, which is really deciding whether to submit a tender or not. I found one the other day that I thought was relevant to myself. I got the tender email alert. I clicked on it, downloaded the documentation from in this case, Tenders WA, had a read through it, and found that it wasn't the right tender for me. There was a couple of things in there that I didn't have the right qualification for, so there was no point in me putting in a bid. But because generally when you see it's a heading and a brief description, sometimes it's not always clear that you're able to apply for that. So it's important, download the documentation from the buyer's website and review the document. You'll often see the term request, so request for tender, request for quote. So review the document to understand what the scope and the specifications and the requirements are. So what is it they're looking to purchase, whether it be goods or services. Have a look at the criteria, the compliance and the qualitative criteria. So the compliance is, and I'll talk more about it, but that's essentially, making, the rules of the tender, essentially, that you need to comply with, and then look at the qualitative criteria around what you must be able to demonstrate that you can do. There might be some pre-qualification requirements, so they're things that you must have, and then you've got other questions that you need to answer. The instructions about the tender process, so things like the due date and time, how you to deliver the documentation and the like. So read through all that, and then details about the buyer and what they are trying to achieve. So it's very important that you read the tender document in detail to get a clear understanding as to what they're looking to purchase, the rules around the tender, the type of organisation that they're looking to engage, and what essentially they're trying to achieve from the procurement outcome, because you're going to need to demonstrate that you can assist them to achieve those outcomes. You're going to be, no matter what the circumstance, you can deliver what they want, when they want it, at the price they're prepared to pay. So determine what the buyer is looking to buy, determine what organisation they're looking to engage, and if you're not sure, seek clarification or ask questions if unsure of the requirements. So there will be a contact person that you can speak to. They'll more often than not want you to submit it via email. If you're not sure of something, make contact with them and get clarification on that, because that's important, because that'll, if you're unsure about something and you don't seek that clarification, you may very well complete some aspect of the tender incorrectly and may influence your price, which could be a bit skewed from what they're looking for. So very important to seek clarification. So briefing sessions, some tenders require you to meet with the buyer, and that'll be open to all parties that have registered to receive that have downloaded the tender document. Once you download the tender document, you'll automatically go on a list of prospective responders, and you will receive all correspondence relating to that tender during the course of the tender opening period. So if you or another prospective respondent, which you referred to at the time, asks a question or seeks clarification, you'll receive an answer, but so will everyone else that's downloaded the document. So, and everyone will be invited to, and it may very well be a part of the tender rules that the briefing session is mandatory, which means that you must attend the meeting to have your bid considered. If it's non-mandatory, it's up to you. I'd recommend you attend anyway. The briefing sessions allow for the buyer to impart more information or answer any of your questions, but at those meetings you can ask questions, seek clarification, receive additional information. Construction facilities management type contracts, so cleaning contracts, for example, they'll more often not want you to go to the locations that you need to clean, just so you can have a walk around. And then the other advantage is you'll get to see who your likely competitors are, which companies you're going to compete with on the bid, because they'll all be there as well. I mean, obviously they'll see you, but you'll also get an idea as to who else is going to bid. Find out who else is likely to bid. Is it an existing contract with an existing supplier? So find out who that supplier is. And you can do that through those websites that I've given to you, because they're particularly government, they have to release all the details of the contract that's awarded. So you'll be able to find that, understand who your competitors are to determine the level that you need to be at in order to win. So who are you going to be competing against, and, you know, what is their capacity to deliver a contract compared to you? And also look at whether you could collaborate with other businesses, and that's important for smaller organisations. And I know I've done it myself plenty of times, because, and one thing I've noticed in tenders recently, particularly after COVID, is that they're particularly concerned about buyers around, you know, business continuity and having suitable and plenty of resources to make sure that you can deliver what they want when they want it. So sometimes collaborating with other businesses actually boosts your capacity to win the tender. And I know myself, I've won tenders because I've collaborated with other businesses where I've been able to, say, meet 60% of the skill set and the requirements of the tender. I've gone out and found people that can help plug the other 40%, and as a team, we've won the tender. So collaboration is an important element of that, because it may give you opportunities to actually be part of a contract that you may not otherwise win. I mean, the relationship that I have with Business Station is a good example, because when the first in WA, back in 2014, when the old business local program was tendered, I was interested in putting in a bid. I downloaded the documentation, went through it all, and that went to the briefing session and looked at who my competitors were going to be. And I thought, well, I can't really compete against them. So I rang up the CEO of Business Station, who I'd met at the meeting, and asked her at the time, that I advised her that I wasn't going to put in a tender, but would she be interested in having me as part of her team and one of my other consultants I had working for me at the time. And we met with her and she agreed, and here I am 8 years later providing services to yourselves through that and other contracts and other things. And I've done work for Business Station. So it's been a good relationship for both of us, but all because I went to a briefing session, essentially. So how can you win a tender? There's essentially four factors, as I said. There's positioning. So you need to position yourself within the market, understand the buyer, the opportunity in the marketplace. Do you neatly fit within that market that the buyer is looking to engage a supplier from? Compliance. You need to tick all the boxes and supply all the information requested. So it is a very formal process. The document that's released will ask you a series of questions of you about how you run your business and your financial security, and whether you're prepared to accept the contract and those sort of things. And you need to demonstrate that you can comply with the tender requirements, particularly in the case of a pre-qualification, like attending a mandatory briefing session. The tender may require you to have a particular license or certification or registration. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to meet the tender compliance requirements. So there's no point putting in a bid unless you can obtain that, meet that compliance before you submit your bid. Persuasion, it's essentially a marketing exercise. You've got to provide a compelling story and reason why I should pick you, because don't forget, I'm going to be, at the closing date and time, as someone assessing tenders, I'm not just going to be reading yours. There might be half a dozen or a dozen responses that I have to work through in order to pick in order for me to pick a supplier to supply the goods or services. And the price, so having the right value strategy and being in the ballpark. So they're not going to give you the price more often than not. I mean, I've had tenders where they have stated, in the case of local government, they've received a grant and they've basically said, well, this is what you're going to get paid. And I've won a couple of those tenders and quotes. But generally, you need to do your research, and you know yourself, you've got your own basis upon which you determine your price. You need to be satisfied that that's within the ballpark of the council. How do you do, or the organisation? One of the things that I did with a local government tender that I was putting a bid for was I went and downloaded a copy of their budget It was for a strategic planning tender. Engage a consultant to prepare a strategic plan. I went through the budget and come across a line item, strategic planning consultancy, $20,000. So I figured, well, they've put in their budget, that's what they're going to pay you. So that was around the price that I went in at. So, do a bit of research and the like on that. So the next few slides, I'm going to look at, you need to satisfy yourself that you're ready to submit a tender. These are the sort of questions you should ask yourself about you as a business. How would you, and then the types of questions you're likely to get in a tender as well. So looking at your cost, what your skills and experience of key personnel, your decision-making processes, your customer and client relationship processes. Will the buyer have concerns about your business? Well, that's part of their due diligence process. One of the questions you'll get in a local government tender is something around your financial security. You might have to supply details of your profit and loss statement and that. So that helps them determine your financial viability. So they will do their due diligence on you before they award a contract. Looking at your products and your services and any innovation, methodology or process to deliver the outcomes the buyer's looking to buy. How will your buyer benefit from the products or services? Risk and mitigation strategies. I've had tenders where I've had to put together a risk management plan and outline how I would mitigate those risks. So what I would suggest, you just take those questions and comments there and just perhaps write some dot points alongside them and just identify any gaps in your capacity to be able to answer those questions before you. I think the success in tendering also, I think, is in pre-planning. So if you can get a lot of the information and understanding of your business model and how you go about things beforehand, that will help, because a lot of the tenders ask the same sort of questions. So the more pre-planning you can do, the better, I think. And then once you've sort of gone through that exercise, you need to make a decision on whether to actually submit the tender. So you've downloaded the documentation, you've read through it, you attended the briefing session, you've looked at whether you're ready to tender for that particular supply, and then make that decision to submit the bid early in the piece. So as I said the other day, I downloaded a document, had a look through it. There was no briefing session, but by the time I got to the end of the document, I realised that it wasn't the right type of tender for me. So look at things like your financial capacity to meet the establishment or ramp up costs. So do you might need to, and likewise the resources needed to deliver the project, if it's a service contract. So do you have enough financial resources? You might need to bring on new staff. You might need to purchase new equipment. Do you have the capacity to do that? Is it consistent with your business strategy? Is it does it present you with a risk? So do that sort of risk or cost benefit analysis on the tender. Does it actually, you winning the tender, present some sort of risk to yourself? Do you have the resources to actually work on the tender document? Who's going to do your day work when you've got to sit there and write a tender? Does your business meet the pre-qualification requirements? So if it doesn't, then there's no point putting in a bid at all, because these are mandatory requirements that you must have. So make that decision early in the process. Don't leave it to the last minute, because the closing date and time will soon creep up on you. So once you've made that decision to submit your tender, you've now got to get on with it and do the work to have that document done by the due date and time. So this is important for someone like me that's going to be reading your document. You're going to make it easy for me to read. Easy for me to read and find the information that I need to make a decision. And remember that I'm not just reading your document, I'm reading all the other submissions that have been submitted as well. So, yeah, not a lot of fun sitting through reading all tenders, so make it easy for me to do it. A bit like reading a book. You make a decision on whether you want to continue reading the book after the first few pages. So, yeah, but we'll go through presentation and structure as well. So in terms of your management of the process, treat it as a project. You've got a start and finish date. And the start date's when you download the document. The finish date is the due date and time. So the opening period, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4, depending on the size of the contract, the dollar value, the risk. So have a look at that. But, identify the people you need to have input into the tender, whether they be internally or externally, strategy, document design, writing, subject matter experts, bid estimators, pricing specialists. All the people and resources. You may have to go outside the organisation to get quotes to help inform your price that you're going to require. You might need to bring on some other contractors to help you. So make sure you've got all their information. So that's important to identify and treat it as a project and manage your time over the peer, manage your time, your resources, and so that you don't want to be in a position where you're rushing around on the day it's due, still getting information together and preparing your document. So gather your information. As I said earlier, a lot of the tenders ask the same sort of questions and require the information. So obviously, your corporate details, insurance details, or your business name and asset registration documents. Have your referees and any written testimonials, brochures, ISO certifications, key personnel, CVs, all that sort of stuff. Maybe set up a file with all this information in it, a tender file that you can, develop some case studies of work that you've done in the past, your methodologies and the like. Have it all together because you can use a lot of this information for other tenders as well. So complete the tender requirements. So generally there's a structure to it. The first part is all your corporate details, pre-qualification requirements, licenses and the like, compliance criteria. So yes, no type questions, just basically tick a box type thing. Pre-qualifications, if you don't meet them, they'll rule you out of consideration. But other compliance, it could be, insurance is a good one. It might say you've got to have 10 million public liability insurance, but you've only got 5 million. So on that basis, you'd tick no to the question, do you meet the insurance requirements? But they do say that, if you are successful in winning the contract, do you have the capacity to increase your insurance to meet that? So perhaps have a discussion with your insurance company, get a letter to say pretty much that if you're successful in winning the contract, you'll be able to increase the insurance to meet the requirements. Selection or qualitative criteria, that's essentially the nuts and bolts of your whole submission. This is where you demonstrate your capacity to deliver what they want when they want it. And questions around your management systems, your key personnel, examples of work that you've done in the past, your methodology, and the like, where you provide your referees. That's what, I'll go through the assessment later, but this is what we're particularly looking at to determine whether we should award you the contract or not. And then your price, what do you intend to charge? And importantly, address the price requirements in a form that's requested. That's particularly important because they will require you, that there'll be a table that you have to fill out because they want to see all the pricing similar. So what you don't want to do is have something that's not recognisable to them. They don't need all your working documents, that how you determine your price, just the final figure, and you need to present that in the same form that they've requested. Now, during that opening period, I mentioned earlier, there might be questions asked by yourself or other prospective respondents. These will be the answers to those questions will be sent around to all the prospective respondents via what's called an addendum, and you'll receive that automatically through. You'll get an email saying to go download the documentation from that same website. So you must do that because it will give additional information, answer questions, a clarification. You need to outline in your bid that you have acknowledged receipt of those. And it's important to go through that information because it may alter how you're going to respond to the bid. Win themes. Yeah, what's so special about you? Why should I pick you? I've got 20 responses that I've got to go through and read, and I've got to award a contract to only one company. Why should I pick you? Reinforce those throughout the application, demonstrate a clear understanding of the buyer's objectives. So that's what win themes are. What are those special factors? What's so good about your business that would set you apart from other businesses? Looking at things like, and part of that's demonstrating your business, your capacity to deliver what I want deliver what the agency wants when they want it at the price they're prepared to pay. So the things that you're going to be assessed on is your expertise, skills, qualifications, and experience of key personnel, and also the company as a whole. A question that I often get asked is, we're just a new business starting out. How can we demonstrate these things? Well, your business as a legal entity might be new, but the people within your business are not. So what you need to do is focus on the people in your business. When you're putting together case studies of work done in the past, draw up case studies that they've worked on that's similar to the contract the tender that you're trying to win. So, being a new business doesn't preclude you, but it's important that you draw on the skills and experience of your key personnel. Organisational structure, and then also demonstrate, so how is your business structured? What is the organisational structure you're going to put in place to deliver the goods or services for that contract? And then also looking at, your management systems, how you go about managing your business. I mean, I'm just working on a tender for a client, and there's a 2-page work health and safety questionnaire that they've got to complete. They've got to provide a copy of their work health and safety policy and also their work health and safety procedure manual. So we've got to make sure that that's all in line. Environmental management, quality management, risk, information security is becoming important. Your governance model, business continuity. So you're going to get questions around these things. So it's important that you have responses ready to go. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. So looking at business capacity, effective and efficient service and product delivery, continuous improvement, evaluation of day-to-day management, and quality business outcomes. And I mean, how you sort of demonstrate that depends on whether it's the supply of a good or the supply of services. It might be a contract to supply services over a 3-year period. So they're going to ask things about your account management, your supplier relationship management, and those sorts of things. And obviously delivering a quality business outcome for your company that you're going to be working for. Presentation and structure, yeah, very important. More often than not, the government, I know in WA and other tenders that I've seen, they have a template that you fill out. If not, use the look at the structure of the tender document and then develop your submission in line with that structure. So, same logical sequence of all the questions, use the same headings, and the like. So if I've got, the tender document that I've released to the market, I can look at your document and I can say, okay, well, there's all the answers to the questions that I've asked. Use simple, concise language, so avoid waffle and repetition. Goes without saying. Use persuasive techniques. So key messages are articulated well. So as I said earlier, it's almost a marketing exercise. You've got to convince me that you can deliver what I want when I want it, and that I'm comfortable that you're the type of organisation that I want to engage. Don't just write page and page of text. If you can break it up with graphs and tables and photos, diagrams, flowcharts and the like, anything that can help you or help deliver your message. Short paragraphs, bullet points are good. Consistent fonts, margins and layout design. And avoid using vague or speculative language like believe, hope or whatever. Be concrete. You can do this, you can do that. So we just jumped ahead. Answer all the questions. If something's not applicable, write not applicable. Don't leave me guessing as to what the answer is. Make the document easily understood by an assessor who may be unfamiliar with your industry. And that's pretty important, because generally with a selection panel, you've got the procurement people, you've got the customer within that, or the project sponsor within that organisation. You might have someone from finance. So you'll have a whole range of people that aren't necessarily, and they may not necessarily be familiar with the industry, but they need to be part of that process to get a broader perspective across the organisation. So, and also they may not be familiar with you. Even if you're an existing supplier having to re-tender, still write the tender as if the people assessing you don't know who you are. So that way, you don't leave any information out. Include it, even though you may have been working for them or they know who you are. So make it engaging enough for the assessor to want to read it in full, like a book. As I said, we're not just reading your document, we're reading everyone else. You may want to include a cover letter, just a short introduction to your business and you. Summarise your win themes. Our capacity to deliver this contract is demonstrated by history of completing similar work, experience of key personnel, that type of thing. Personal commitment to making the supply of service product a success. Your contact details and signed by the most senior person in the organisation. Right, and then once we've done that, we've got to finalise the submission. So, look at your win themes, answer all the questions. That's important. As I said, don't leave me guessing. If something's not applicable, write not applicable. The depth of information is appropriate. It's logical and easy to read. Internally consistent and technically correct, so you're not saying one thing on one page and contradicting yourself on another. technically correct. If you've got to include plans or diagrams or something that, they're the latest and correct version. You've provided all the information required. So if they want to see certificates of currency for insurance, make sure you include it. Conduct an independent peer review. So what I mean by that is it's part of your proofreading. You might want to get someone that hasn't been involved in the process to read through your document and essentially ask those questions on this page. And general proofreading, spelling, grammar, punctuation, that type of stuff. So that you put in place a really professional looking and well written document. And package and deliver by the due date and time. Otherwise, your bid won't even be considered, won't even get to the tender box. Generally, most tenders are now uploaded through the internet, the same portal that you downloaded the documentation from. Submit the application as per the requirements. So the rules will generally have things around, the number of files and the type of file to be uploaded, the size of the file, and the like. So just, part of your early work is reading through and understanding how you deliver it. It's very rare that they're delivered in paper version these days. Remote organisations may require it, but generally it's mostly electronic. Obtain a delivery receipt. So when you upload documents, you'll automatically receive that by email. And respond promptly to any requests for further information. So some tenders might have a shortlisting process where, they'll identify, from the written tender submissions, they'll identify a short list of suppliers and then call you in for a meeting or a presentation. So make sure that you're available to do that. And then after that, they'll then go and do a reassessment of the bids and then award the contract. So just again, the tender rules will outline whether there's a short list and a presentation requirement as part of it. So that's your job done. You've now written your document and you've submitted it by the due date and time. Then it's over to me to do my job and assess the bids. So all tenders are assessed against the selection criteria referred to in the request documents. We look at the strengths and weaknesses of the offers. We ascertain whether you have an understanding of the qualitative requirements and whether you have demonstrated your capacity to meet those requirements. Essentially, we want to, after reading through your document, I'd like to be in a position where I'm confident that you can deliver what I want, when I want it, at the price that I'm prepared to pay. So the first thing we do is we look at the compliance criteria. One, have you met the pre-qualification requirements? If you haven't, then your tender goes in the bin. Won't even be considered. We look at whether you've met the conditions of participation. So you've answered all the questions, you've provided all the information required. You've satisfied us as to your financial security, and you've agreed to the contract. If you don't agree to the contract, you can list any aspects of the contract that you're not happy with. Generally, these require a yes/no answer. Where no answer is given, provide an explanation as to why you answered no. So the insurance example that I gave earlier is an example of where you may not meet the requirement, but it's not going to preclude you from having your bid considered because it's not a pre-qualification requirement. So you may not need to comply with every detail, but it helps if you do. So the selection and qualitative criteria, as I mentioned earlier, this is the nuts and bolts. And they may be weighted, the questions, and they will be point scored. So, 5 questions, one might be worth 10%, another 30%, another 40% type thing. And they'll be point scored in the sense that when the tender closes, the panel members will get copies of the documentation and they'll read through them individually without any reference to anyone else. And they'll give each question a score out of 10, for example, and then the selection panel will meet as a team, and then they'll agree on a point score for each bid, and then they'll go through and rank the bids from the highest point score to the lowest, and then they'll take the highest point scoring, and that'll be the company that's at that stage is the preferred supplier, and then they'll have a look at your price to see whether the price is in within the ballpark that they want. And if that's the case, they'll award the contract. So the types of questions you're likely to get, and they sort of fall within those list of questions I had in the green, are you ready to tender slides. So capacity to deliver the goods or services. So here they're looking at your organisational capacity, so your management systems and the like, governance, business continuity, management, account management, those types of things. Skills, qualifications and experience of key personnel. So have CVs of those people in your bid. History of completing similar projects or supply products. So develop some case studies of work that you've done, who the client was, what the project was, and how you went about delivering that project from start to finish. Did any issues arise during that project? How did you resolve those issues? And what was the end result for the client? And relate those to the type of goods or services that you're providing. The methodology to deliver the goods or services, so essentially how you're going to go about doing that. You might want to include a project schedule, for example, and then demonstrate an understanding of the scopes of works or specifications. So you need to be able to demonstrate to them that you understand what they want. The price criteria. So assessed on value for money, the buyer will adopt the cheapest compliant decision. So when they say, lowest price not necessarily accepted, that's true. I know of a government agency in WA that's just recently accepted a $10,000 to $20,000 more than another business was offering. So it is true, but if they can get the lowest price, they will. But essentially, they want the best company to be able to deliver it. So demonstrate why your price will deliver value, but also just be mindful of the types of price basis. So could be a schedule of rates, lump sum, time payment, etc. So the table that you fill out and the price basis will be advised to you, and you need to quote it on that basis. So there might be things like local content and regional price preferences. If you're a Perth or a metropolitan-based business bidding for a job in the country, then suppliers based in that country area may very well get a more favourable weighting than a Perth-based business, because they obviously want to grow regional businesses. Buy local policies. In WA, there's the industry participation plans that you might have to prepare, and also be mindful of Aboriginal and disability service providers. Government, I know in WA, can go straight to those providers without going to tender. So after contract award, well, hopefully you'll get it. You'll get a phone call and say that you've got the job, and then you'll sit down and write the tender, finalise the contract, and get on with the supply of goods or services. If unsuccessful, you'll be advised in writing of the outcome anyway. If you're unsuccessful, you're generally advised who the successful supplier was. You are entitled to obtain feedback on your submission. So do that, because that helps with other tenders. always, ask sort of questions, how did you answer all the questions? Was it easy to read? Why didn't I win? Where could I improve for next time? So it's good to get the feedback, not because you want to improve your capacity to write tenders, but it also shows that you're interested in working with that organisation. You might say to them, look, I'm keen to win future tenders with you. Can you give me some advice on how I could improve? So just have that general chat and build that relationship with them. So that's the tender process. I'm just going to touch on management systems now, which I've referred to in my presentation. All tenders are going to require details of your organisational capacity to effectively manage the supply of goods or services. And having robust systems in place is critical to demonstrating this capacity. So, as I said, I'm just working on a tender at the moment that requires us to outline a safety policy and procedure and answer a questionnaire on our safety management. So if I can't do that, then we're going to be ranked poorly in our tender response. So we've got to develop those policies and procedures, which we've already got in place, my client's already got in place, but we're just reviewing those to bring them up to date. And it could be a pre-qualification requirement that you have a certain system or license in place and that's certified. It's rare that they'll say that you've got to have it certified because that will eliminate a lot of the market. But you'll often see a question, do you have a management system consistent with quality management, ISO 9001? Or questions around your environmental management or your safety management. So if you don't have these systems in place, it's going to be, it's good for business management for you and your risk management as a business owner, but it's also good from a business development point of view, is it's going to help you answer these questions and possibly win you a tender as well. But if you do have them certified, well, then you're going to get a higher point score than a company that doesn't have them certified. But again, it's all in proportion to the size of your business. So certified management systems, quality management, that's how you deliver your products and services to the market and ensure customer satisfaction. Environmental management, your interaction with the natural environment and how you protect the environment. Occupational health and safety, or in Australia we use the term work health and safety. So how do you manage safety hazards and control risks? Information security, so increasingly important, cyber security, protecting personal information, record keeping, document control, and the like. So, government agencies governed by various legislation around record keeping, freedom of information, and the like. So have to be mindful of that. Good governance, so whistleblower codes of conduct, fraud and corruption control, corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is becoming an important issue, and I'm seeing the last few years I've been seeing questions around that. How will if awarding you the contract, how will that benefit the state from an economic or social or environmental perspective, looking at your corporate citizenship. Other management systems, risk management. So how do you manage risk? How are you going to manage risk in the project? Security and resilience, so business continuity. This is again ensuring that no matter what the circumstances, you can still deliver what I want when I want it. So let's say you're a cleaning company, you've got to clean and strip and seal some floors to a public hall by Saturday for a function. You're on site on the Wednesday and your machinery breaks down. What do you do? How do you ensure that the job's done by that Saturday night or by the time that they've given it to you to complete? Do you have backup machinery? Demonstrate how you maintain your machinery so it doesn't break down. If it does break down, do you have another machine that you can bring on the site, or do you have an arrangement with a supplier that can get you one immediately? That type of thing. So no matter what the circumstances, whether it be employees not turning up for work, machinery breaking down, you coming down sick as the business owner, you've got COVID and in isolation for a week, no matter what the circumstances, you can deliver what I want when I want it. Human resources, how you recruit and select your staff and manage performance and the like. Financial policies, so your internal controls, how do you manage that to ensure your financial viability? They don't want to sign you up with a 3-year contract and find you go broke halfway through it. And then protecting business information. So as I mentioned, increasing focus. You're going to get questions around this in your tender, or at least statements around what's required in terms of record keeping and document control. Some legislation, all states, or the Commonwealth, the Privacy Act, some states have a similar act as well. State Records Act, Freedom of Information Act, they're things that all government has. And then private industry have their own, legal requirements around record keeping and document control, and may very well ask you questions on that. So that's it for today. I'll just, in conclusion, just a couple of slides to reinforce the tendering is a great way to earn new business. But the process of preparing your submission can be time and resource intensive. It should be one component of your business development marketing strategy. So keep doing all those other things that you do. Pick the right tenders that you think you can win and know you can deliver. So don't just apply for everything, because you'll be spending all your time writing tenders and not earning money otherwise. Attend briefing sessions, regardless of whether they're mandatory or not. Treat the process as a project and manage people resources accordingly. Develop win themes and reinforce these throughout the submission. And have in place robust management systems to demonstrate organisational capacity. Be particular about presentation and structure. Undertake a critical review of the submission, so proofread and edit, and deliver it by the due date and time. Otherwise, you've done a lot of work for nothing. So that's the critical element of all that. So thank you for attending today. I'll just open up the mic. If you want to ask a question, please do so. I'll keep it open until 10 past 10 Perth time. Otherwise, I'll send you a copy of these slides later today. This is my contact details. So happy to have a follow-up one-to-one session with you. I do run webinars. I've got one a bit later on how to find and write grants. I also run webinars on work health and safety and information security management, asset management, and all those sort of business management type systems and procedures.
Thank you so much, David. I will keep your contact and I will come back to you. I appreciate all the knowledge. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for that. And as I said, I'll send the slides through later on today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. And we are in touch. Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Thanks for that.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
See ya.